Good morning, everyone. I let me see if I'm live on my page. Good morning, everyone. Yes, I am live. Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm just kind of checking everywhere just to make sure that I am live and trying to share the broadcast and just to see if it's live in my groups. So good morning. I was going to do this on on Sunday, but Sunday's kind of getting busy. And as it's Father's Day, and we have some surprises planned for Mr. D. I just thought I would come now and have this conversation because it's a really important conversation. I want to share this on my personal page. It's a really important conversation to have. So it's coming up to Father's Day, and I know as when it's Mother's Day, there's a lot of people that are struggling. And I just thought, let me just pop in and come and have this conversation with you to talk about some of the effects of the emotionally absent father. Hey, good morning. I can see that somebody's joined me live, and I appreciate that. I'm going to share this on my page now so that we can get cracking and I can dive into what I want to talk to you about. So I'm going to, it's not letting me do that. Oh, that's a shame. I wanted to share this on my page, but anyway, I'll share it afterwards. So for those who are watching me for the first time, my name is Joanna Daniel, and I am founder of Wounds to Scars. I create online courses and events like retreats and conferences that works with adult survivors of childhood trauma and abuse. So that's who I am, and that's what I do. I want to talk about the emotionally absent father. Something came up on my feed on yesterday, actually. Yesterday, Facebook. You know how Facebook share with you some feed, some of your stuff, your old posts. And yesterday, something came up that I did 3 years ago, and it was a Facebook Live that I did like this on Father's Day, and it was lessons from my father. So I just want to talk. I want to talk to that just now. Not lessons from my father. I'm talking about impact of the emotionally absent father. So not the what's going on? Sorry, I've got kind of like a problem here. Not the physically absent father per se, the emotionally absent father, because sometimes father is present, as in is in the home, but he's not playing the role that he should play. He's not able, and when I say that, he's not able to connect. So some of the stuff that I'm going to use is coming from my journal that I wrote 2 years ago called Father and Me. And although this applies to men too, it was specifically written for to help. I was working with a client at the time, working through father-daughter stuff, and I wrote this to facilitate that process and to help the healing. So this is available, and I'm going to put the link. I'm going to have a special code for over the weekend as we're going through Father's Day. And I know that there's some people who will not be able to be on Facebook, will not be able to be on Instagram or, on social media because of the pain. So that's what we do. So I thought, let me come and talk about it. So one of the entries that I have here is, and maybe this is what this video will help you to do, manage expectations. This is what this video to do will help you manage expectations. So again, if you're just joining me, my name is Joanna Daniel, and I work with adult survivors of childhood trauma and abuse, and I help people heal so that they can show up better, so that they can show up different in their relationships, because the stuff that we experience in childhood really do impact significantly our relationships. So a quote from my journal, Father and Me, that I wrote 2 years ago says, manage expectations, says, I'm not sure if our views and expectations of fathers are intrinsic, or our opinions were influenced by society and what they tell us a father should be. Whether it's innate or not, we expect certain things from our fathers, and when they're not met, they leave us feeling lonely, discouraged, and hurt. That's one of the days in the journal. And that's why I wanted to come and have this conversation, because sometimes when I do mother and daughter stuff, people usually ask, do you do father-daughter things too? And my focus mainly is mother-daughter, but I have to speak to this relationship because I know how important it is. And when it's not there, the damage that it can cause. And sometimes I understand that sometimes fathers, the only thing they know how to provide, they know how to they're providers. Many fathers are really good providers. They pay school fees, they buy food, they buy clothes, they, you know, they do some of those things, but we want emotional connection. And if you're a father listening and you're thinking, well, why isn't it enough that I provide food and clothing and shelter, and there's a house, they have a nice home, there's a roof, why isn't that enough? Well, we're going to talk about why it's not enough. And I really do hope that if you're listening, that you'll stick around, because your daughter needs you. It's, you know. So as I said, some men know how to take care of physical things, but they know how to take care of emotional things. And there's a fallout from that. And these interactions or lack of interactions, they shape us. They shape who we are as people. They shape who become as women and as men. So there's three fallouts, and I'm going to talk. There's self-blame, there is self-hate, and there's self-sabotage. I'm going to talk about those three. Of course, you know that this issue is complex, and there's a lot more fallout of the absent father, the emotionally absent father, but I want to address those three. So let's start with self-blame, for example, the way we experience rejection, because that's what it will be experienced as a kind of like an abandonment. Like, he's there, but he's not there. It's not something that there's nothing that I can talk to him about. Like, if I have struggles, I wouldn't go to him for advice because he wouldn't know what to tell me. Or if I'm hurt in any way, that I wouldn't. Funny, there's some daughters who know that their dad will protect them in terms of keep them safe physically, but don't know how to keep them safe emotionally, or how to help them to have good, safe boundaries, how to talk to them about what life is and how life is going to be, and how to direct them. And I can't help but talk about it with a little compassion, because I know it's because it was lacking for them too. So fathers, if you're listening and you know that that's lacking for you too, that you might want to go and get some help in order to say, well, how can I be the best mirror that I can be for my daughter? And it doesn't matter how old she is, she really does need you still. A woman needs her father too, believe me. So let's talk about self-blame when it kind of shows up as rejection, and why it's important to identify this, women especially, is because men too, it shows up in your relationship as a pattern, a cycle that you keep repeating. And because it leaves a feeling of not good enough. And when we feel not good enough, we try to fill that void with things. And sometimes they're women who are amazing at what they do in life. They're great entrepreneurs. They're climbing the career ladder. They're achieving successfully. They're successful people. But at the heart, there's still a deficit of I'm not good enough. So sometimes those things, though they're wonderful, they're used as a medication, a way of soothing. It's a way of, I need to prove that I am, and these are the things that are going to do it for me. So sometimes success is used in that way. There's a pattern that repeats through relationships, like the absence of dad leaves that deficit, and that's the thing that we need in our romantic relationships. But that's the thing that we sometimes don't have in our romantic relationships. For some women, you want emotional connection, but you tend to drawn to men who can't give emotional connection. They're not emotionally available, because that's the pattern that is familiar. And we usually go for what's familiar. Sometimes it's not what we want, and we know it. This subconscious pattern is the one that we go after. So you might find that you're in a string of relationships that sometimes are toxic. Sometimes those relationships are they're not fulfilling in any way. They're not serving you in any way. These people can't meet your needs, and you're fighting battles with your spouse that you really are. It's your father you're fighting, really. And so you're ending up in these relationships. And I want to say to you that patterns can heal. If you're in a committed relationship and the next person is willing to do the work, those patterns can heal, and the relationship can become safe and fulfilling, because you can heal those patterns for yourself. Not doing perhaps self-help work. You will need the help of a professional to help you, but it really would be helpful for you to address those patterns. Because another place that it might show up is in how you parent your son. It might show up in how you parent your son, and your ability or inability to connect with him, really connect with your son. Okay. Also, the way you interact with sometimes male authority figures or just authority figures in general will be a pattern of the relationship that you have with that lack of connection. And my journal is written from a Christian perspective. So for those of us who are Christians, it will also affect the relationship that you have with God. You will not be able to trust him fully or see him or be able to relate to him as a father. And I know some people probably will be able to relate to that. So number 2 is self-hate. And this manifests in low self-worth. When the person who is supposed to love and protect us don't reflect love through connection, wanting to spend time with, to sit with and play with, and those early years that are so important to connect with us, then it leaves us with questions. It leaves us with questions that we probably will never get answered. And in those unanswered questions, we develop a narrative that we align with, something that we tell ourselves, that it's because I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable. If I was lovable, my dad would love me. What is wrong with me that he can't love me? And I just want you to know that there's nothing wrong with you. The stories of worth that you're telling yourself is not true. Those stories are not true. But we develop a way to protect ourselves. And so these are stories that we tell to try to find an answer as to why this man who fathered me cannot spend time with me. What's wrong? The person who was supposed to mirror what life should be can't do that. My mirror is broken. Another way of saying it. So the self-worth again manifests itself in different ways, and people go on to harm themselves in different ways and use other things to fill that gap and that void. But once again, these injuries can heal, and you don't have to live in that place of pain when there's a deficit. And then there's self-sabotage. We self-sabotage a relationship. If he can't love me, then no one else will. No one else can love me. And so we find ways to sabotage relationships, even relationships that are nice and safe, and relationships that people who would want to come into your life and really love and protect you. There is a wall because you can't allow anybody in. You can't trust that they're going to do it because the man who should have done that and reflected that didn't do it. And so you're struggling to accept. And so the different ways people will sabotage really strong relationships, and then is left with a sense of guilt and self-fulfilling prophecy, like, see, they can't love me, I'm not lovable. So if you are in that cycle of sabotaging relationships or ending up in toxic relationships, because one of the things is looking for love in all the wrong places from all the wrong people who cannot love you the way that you need to be and were meant to be loved, and they cannot meet your needs. And so you might be trapped in the cycle of toxic relationships. I want you to know that you can break free, that you can heal, and you can learn how to love and accept yourself, and know that you are lovable and that you are loved, and your ability to receive love and to give it is not dependent on your father's inability to give you love. Okay. And that can heal, and that deep sense of rejection and abandonment can heal, and you can enjoy safe, fulfilling relationships, both romantically and interpersonal relationships, and you can have safe, secure connection with your children too. So the deep rejection, because of the deep rejection, as I said, we sabotage relationships, and sometimes people, go as far as sabotaging their health. People sabotage their health by not looking after themselves, by not doing proper self-care or knowing what is needed to look after us, and there's just this feeling of sometimes depression and loneliness and apathy because and sometimes you don't know, there's no name for it. And I hope if you're listening to this and you feel like that might be what yours is called, that you will get support. I always encourage people to get support. There are lots of self-help tools, like my journal, as I said, my one self-help tool, but there's so many, and there are many other self-help tools like courses and stuff like that. But I'd encourage you to find somebody to talk to, somebody who is skilled and in walking with you and helping you to heal those injuries. Okay. And sometimes, you know, there's on one end of the spectrum, there are people who are successful and driven and use that to fill the gap. They think to fill the gap. It never does fill it. But then on the other end of the scale, there are those people who sabotage opportunities because I don't feel worthy, don't feel good enough, don't feel able enough, and don't feel like this is going to work for me because this person who should reflect that doesn't. And sometimes that's a subconscious conversation, you know, like sometimes when you're sabotaging your relationships and when you're in a cycle of and a pattern of toxic relationships or broken relationships, when nobody's staying for long and you can't connect and attach with people, sometimes we don't know the name for it. And oftentimes when people don't know the name for it, well, we get the blame. You know, it must be me, it must be my fault. Look, all around me, there are people who tend to leave, nobody stay. So then it must be my fault. It's you can fix it, but it didn't originate with you, didn't start with you. And so although you can fix it, just know that it's something that you inherited, something that you got. It was something that was given to you. But you have the responsibility as an adult to seek the support that will help to fix that. I just wanted to read just another quote from the journal, and it's around emotional availability. And this is how crucial and important this is. It says, when emotional availability occurs, the next person is unable to connect or to be present with their feelings. They're unable to communicate what they're feeling or to be present with you as you share how you feel. So it's a two-way, and that's why it affects relationships so drastically, because when we are unable to connect with how we feel, then we won't be able to connect with how anybody else feel. And then we're not able to extend empathy and support and have safe, fulfilling relationships. Sometimes fear is an issue. The thought of processing the impact of the relationship between you and your dad can generate feelings of anxiety. And so one of the days I designed some questions to help you work through those emotions, of anxiety, anxiety. So it asks you to look at the number one driver for your fear, and we have a verse there that goes with fear. It looks at sadness and how to set effective boundaries. And here's a big, big, big one. Here's a big piece that we often don't think about, and it's the air of identity. Not having a father can make you question the reason for your existence. Like, we get our identity, we get our sense of self from our parents. And when one of the parent isn't present physically or emotionally, we can question, then who am I? If I'm not, if that what's reflected back is not positive, then who am I? And so that's why it's really important to go look at that. As I said, I'm going to have a code for a discount for the journal that is available throughout the weekend. If you know that this is a relationship that you need to process, I really would encourage you to start to process, or if you have started, to continue to not give up. So I'm going to go check if there are any questions. If you have any questions, I'm just going to be available for a short while to answer any questions that anybody have. If you're not happy to ask the questions here on Facebook, please please put the questions. You can inbox me with your questions, or you can always email me at joanna@ownsthescars.com, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. I can't see any questions, but I can see that people are here. Really appreciate you taking the time to be with me today. Thank you so much for joining.